Audacity does not want to work with my good microphone today, so please forgive any bad audio quality because I have to use my headset mic this time. Anyway, the typical lifespan of a modern domesticated horse is about 25 to 30 years. But since these are magical, talking, multicolored horses, I think our suspension of disbelief allows us to consider that the ponies of Equestria have lifespans about the same as humans, if not longer, immortal alicorns aside. But even considering their lifespans and ages to be on par with ours hasn't led us much closer to figuring out just how old these ponies are. Though, to be fair, there isn't really anything we can say for certain aside from Fluttershy being a year older than Pinkie Pie. Or is there? For today's episode, if you couldn't guess from the introduction and title, we're going to determine the ages of the main six. We all know, thanks to the mimetic line from Season 1, that Fluttershy is a year older than Pinkie Pie, but that doesn't give us a lot to work with just yet. Until we can figure out how old either one of them is, we can't put that information to good use. And to figure out how old they are, since nothing's stated in canon, we have to figure out how old some pony else is and compare them. Oh boy. Luckily, Equestria Girls gives us something to go off of, and thanks to tweets by Megan McCarthy, the writer of Equestria Girls and many episodes, we can confirm that the movie is in fact canon to the show, so it counts as a credible source of information. But in order to start that off, we need to figure out the age of a character not even in the main six. Sunset Shimmer. The movie takes place in a high school setting, and high school more often than not lasts 4 years. Since Sunset Shimmer was shown to have won the Princess of the Fall formal crown 3 years in a row, and this is her 4th go at it during the movie, this means that she is in her final year, or as Americans refer to it, senior year. Students in their senior years often graduate when they are 18 years old, unless they skip grades or were held behind. Or, like me, have a weird birthday. But now we've been presented with quite a few problems to sort out before we can go any further. First, we have to figure out how close to graduation we are in the movie. Second, we have to find out roughly when Sunset Shimmer's birthday is. And third, we have to figure out the age relation between Sunset Shimmer and Twilight Sparkle. Let's tackle that first problem because the answer is actually pretty simple. High school starts in September, which is considered late summer or early fall. Since there's a fall formal dance happening within a couple days of Twilight arriving, it must be at the beginning of the year. There's no snow like you would see in November or December, so it must be October or September. And since there's no noticeable signs of it being fall in the outdoor scenes, it's gotta be early on, meaning September. So this is near the very beginning of the school year. In other words, nowhere close to graduation. And yes, having a school dance in the first month of the year does make sense in this case. Why? Because Pinkie Pie is the head of the planning committee, no more needs to be said. Now for Sunset's birthday. You'd think this would be hard or even impossible to figure out, but that isn't the case. Sunset was a pony before she became a human, so her parents were ponies as well. Horse heat cycles happen about once a month and last roughly a week, but aren't nearly as bad during the colder months, in other words from October through to March. We can't prove that Sunset was conceived when her mother was at heat, but it's a very likely scenario and that's all we have to work with right now. Besides, in the long run this isn't going to be too important. We can assume that Sunset's parents, got it on, sometime from April to September. It takes a mare, on average, 330 to 345 days after conception to give birth. That means 47 to 49 weeks, almost a whole year. If Sunset was conceived within those months, then she would almost definitely have been born sometime from March to August. Either way, she'd be born closer to graduation than to the start of the school year. So during Equestria Girls, she would most likely be 17 years old, an average age for a senior at the start of the year. And now for the third problem. It'd be easy to just say Twilight and Sunset are the same age, but we need proof first. Let's take a look at this scene where Sunset and Twilight, as ponies, are running down the hall. Sunset has her cloak on, making it hard to tell her height, but we can get the comparison we need from her horn. The way she's running, her horn is almost perfectly level with this line on the wall. When we see Twilight in the same shot, she's running with her horn in the air, but when she tilts her head down to cast her teleportation spell, she points her horn at the same angle as Sunset's, and it's slightly higher than Sunset's was in comparison to the line on the wall. This means that Twilight is a little bit taller than Sunset, which would make her about the same age. When Twilight became an alicorn, she grew taller than before, yet Sunset is almost at her height, so it's safe to assume that without her little bit of extra height, Twilight would be just as tall as Sunset. So therefore, if Sunset is 17, then Twilight would also be 17. Not quite the late teens, early 20s that fanfiction was portraying her as, huh? But there's more. Now that we know Twilight Sparkle is 17 years old, we need to figure out the ages of 5 more ponies. We can do this by taking Cutie Mark Chronicles into account, as all 6 ponies get their cutie marks at roughly the same time, and definitely the same day. Applejack mentions in one episode how she was one of the last in her class to get her cutie mark. However, in Cutie Mark Chronicles, Rarity is in a class where we can see that one of her classmates is a blank flank, signifying that she was not one of the last to get her own mark. So we can tell that Applejack is older than Rarity, likely by a year. After all, Applejack was a late bloomer, but Rarity mentioned nothing about being one, even though such information would undoubtedly come up sooner or later, given how Sweetie Belle is her sister. So it's very likely that those comments you were about to type saying, maybe Rarity and that one classmate are the only blank flanks left in class, are pretty much null and void. Now we go to Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy's parts of the episode. Fluttershy is noticeably a bit taller than Rainbow Dash, and she's in the same class despite being a weak flyer, implying she's been held behind. So we can safely assume that Fluttershy is a year older than Rainbow Dash. And thanks to Andrea Libman being older than Andrea Libman, she's also a year older than Pinkie Pie. This makes Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie the same age, most likely along with Rarity, while Fluttershy and Applejack are the same as each other. However, this doesn't tell us the actual numbers yet, because we need to find a fact that either subtly states their age, or compares it to Twilight's. In the episode Pinkie Pride, we see Rainbow Dash's birthday cake with a number of candles on it, but that doesn't actually help us. Counting the candles visible to us, we see 21, which isn't too unreasonable. But because of how cakes normally are, with the exception of the candle at the top, there'd be the same amount of candles visible to us on the other side of that layer of cake. Meaning that if we went with this birthday cake's candles to figure out Rainbow Dash's age, she would be 41 years old. And I think we can all safely agree that is not the case. But using Rainbow Dash is a step in the right direction. Let's take a look at 2 episodes, Wonderbolt's Academy and Testing 123. Both of these episodes paint the Wonderbolts as being military, even basically outright stating it in the latter. In the former, Rainbow is basically accepted into military training, something that you can only enlist in if you are 18 years old, or with parental consent, 17. Since Rainbow's parents are nowhere to be seen, but we also know Rainbow would apply for the Wonderbolts as soon as she could, we can safely assume that in this episode, she's 18 years old, and then everything else just falls into place. Twilight Sparkle, 17 years old. Rainbow Dash, 18, along with Pinkie Pie and Rarity, and that leaves Fluttershy and Applejack at 19. However, as it turns out, this entire episode was basically all for nothing. This information is likely no longer accurate because of the episode timeline. We don't see birthdays very often. In fact, over the course of 4 seasons, we've only seen 1 birthday each for Twilight, Pinkie, and Rainbow Dash. Oh, and Spike too, I guess. So despite our best efforts, while we can figure out roughly the ages of the main 6, we can't pinpoint the proper number. Even if we were to arrange all the episodes in proper order, it still wouldn't help, because we don't know how many birthdays we're skipping over. And that, viewers, is why we can't say for certain how old the main 6 are, just an estimate. We know that some of them are definitely older or younger than others, and we know that they're in their mid to late teens, but despite my research, that's all we can say for certain. Hey, want to help make future episodes of Cutie Mark Laboratories better than ever? Check the description below for a link to my Patreon account and donate to receive cool rewards in addition to supporting this channel and show. Also, while you're at it, check the description for a link to a survey I'm running for an upcoming episode. Fill it out as accurately as you can and spread the word, and you'll help a rather important episode be as accurate as it can possibly be. Thanks for sticking around!